What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Hoop and Stuff podcast. I'm your host, Isaac, and today we're going to talk about NFL running backs, specifically like their injuries and like their values and their contracts. So let's get right into it. To start off, for our first running back, we have Tony Pollard, and Tony Pollard's contract was up this past offseason, and he also just had an injury last season. So with coming off of a broken leg, Dallas had no clue how he was going to play. He could have ended up coming back and not being as good as he was last year, or he could be even better. But Pollard did hold off to see what he could get and eventually signed a 1-year, $10 million contract with the Dallas Cowboys, and that's just like his base salary. That doesn't count his signing bonus and like incentives and stuff like that. But for a running back at Pollard's level, I think that's a steal for them to get him at that low of a price. I'm sure he's below $20 million after like the signing bonuses and stuff. So that's a steal, honestly, because he played great, especially in week 1. He's played great. But the problem with running backs like Pollard, who had a major injury, is that those injuries could reoccur season after season after season. Then their contract isn't worth it, because like we've seen that with multiple players in the past who I'm going to talk about in this episode. But we've seen multiple players who they get hurt quite often, and then they don't play for a lot of the season because of their injuries. Next up, we're going to talk about Dalvin Cook. And Cook was dropped by the Vikings after playing for only 6 years for them. And at one point, he was a candidate for Comeback Player of the Year. And I mean, 6 years is quite a bit, but some people stay on the same team for their whole career. But I mean, 6 years is still pretty long, I guess. But Cook was picked up by the Jets after he was dropped by the Vikings. And in the first 2 weeks, it looked like he was on his way to having the worst year of his career so far. And between the two games, he had 17 attempts for only 40 yards in week 2. In the first 2 weeks. But Cook is a very good example of a running back who didn't have a long shelf life. And, I mean, he only had 4 years in his prime before becoming a bad running back, I'd say. But, yeah, he didn't really have a very long, I guess you could say, shelf life, which is probably going to be used, multiple times throughout this episode, because most running backs don't have a very long period of, major success, and which people would call short shelf life for something like that, obviously as a metaphor or a simile, whatever. I'm not very good with the English terms. It's either metaphor or simile, but I think you guys got what I mean. But so that's a big problem with Cook. But to just wrap up with Cook, I think that he will eventually be released to free agency this year, sooner or later, by the Jets. But the crazy thing is, even though Cook hasn't been producing, he still had more touches than fellow Jets running back Breece Hall, who was pretty mad about his 4 touches. And honestly, I would be mad if that happened to me too, because honestly, Breece Hall could be a top 5 running back if they just stuck to running with him instead of Dalvin Cook, because Dalvin Cook is just getting so much older and he's not producing at all anymore. I mean, off 17 attempts, he had 40 yards, so it hasn't been a very good year for the first 2 weeks for Dalvin Cook. Now let's talk about Nick Chubb, who we saw with a injury in week 2. So Nick Chubb suffered a severe injury to his left knee and was carted off the field. He will be out for the remainder of the season, which is very upsetting for the Browns fans. And there wasn't much detail on the injury last I checked, and nothing's been released really, what kind of injury it was. But I just know it was terrible. I've seen the replay multiple times, and it's literally just gross. You can go watch it, it's on TikTok or YouTube, but you can go find it in multiple places if you want to watch it. But it's just nasty. His leg just bends the whole wrong way. But the loss of this phenomenal running back will majorly affect the Browns team and will probably ruin the rest of their season. I mean, they have an okay team, but without Nick Chubb, I feel like they're going to be terrible. And out of the last 5 seasons, Chubb has been the NFL, out of the last 5 seasons, Chubb has been in the NFL. I was going a little too quick there. But out of the last 5 seasons he's been in the NFL, he was a Pro Bowl running back 4 times, which is very impressive, honestly, because that means every year besides his rookie year, he was a Pro Bowl player. Besides, obviously, this year he won't be because he's not going to play besides the first 2 weeks. But Chubb had a great start to this season. He had like 170 yards on 28 attempts in the last 2 games. And this is an injury that could possibly affect the rest of Chubb's career. And this could be an ongoing thing with him where he gets injured, like we've seen, again, like I said earlier, we've seen with multiple running backs in the past. So this could definitely affect Chubb's career, but hopefully it doesn't because he is a phenomenal running back. Next up, we have Saquon Barkley. So now that we can talk about Saquon Barkley and his injury, Barkley got a sprained ankle, and he's going to be sidelined for a couple weeks from the Giants. And without him, the Giants are going to be nothing, honestly. They're going to have to run so much because Daniel Jones has, like, literally no wide receivers. I mean, he has a couple solid, like, they're okay, but nobody's great. And so now they're going to have to depend on Matt Breida. And Barkley has a history of getting injured, so I'm not really surprised with this. But it's a common thing for running backs to get injured, I guess. So, like, within the running back, I guess you could say, like, community, there's quite often an injury. And he had a good season last year, but he held off on signing with the New York Giants to see if there was, like, better offers out there, just to set, like, the same thing Tony Pollard did and multiple other players that we'll talk about in this episode. But after Barkley and the Giants couldn't agree to a long-term contract, he was given a 1-year, $10 million deal before, like, all the bonuses and incentives and stuff like that. He just got a 1-year, $10 million deal. And he should probably never get a long-term deal with his history of injuries, to be honest. But I think it was a good deal for the Giants because obviously they didn't know he was gonna stay. They didn't know if he was gonna stay healthy or not because, like I said, last year he seemed to stay pretty healthy, and he had a pretty good year. But like a lot of times in the past, we've seen him hurt and out for the remainder of the season at some points. So that's a big problem for Saquon. Next up, we have Christian McCaffrey, and CMC is on pace for 2,000 rushing yards this year, which would be an amazing goal for him. And CMC is one of those great running backs who we have seen, unfortunately, get injured over and over again. So to see him succeed this year and last year is really nice. He's a super athletic running back and is probably the best in the league right now. Especially with Nick Chubb being injured, because Nick Chubb's obviously a beast. But like I said, he's crazy athletic. He can jump really high. He's super fast. So that's a big thing for Christian McCaffrey. And since he's been traded to the 49ers, he seemed to stay pretty healthy and very productive. And I feel like just when he was on the Panthers, he kept getting injured over and over again. But last year, he was traded to the 49ers, and that was the first season that I think in a long time that he hasn't gotten injured. Just with, like I said, when he was with the Panthers, he just got injured so much, and that was a big problem for his career. But now that he's on the 49ers, he seems to stay pretty healthy, which is definitely a good thing for Christian McCaffrey because he is a very talented running back. We also have to talk about Leonard Fournette. He is one of those running backs who, like I said, I feel had a short shelf life. And he made bad decisions by gaining weight and, like, a lot of weight, which led to him being dropped by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I mean, he gained, like, 30 pounds. He got up to, like, 270 pounds, which is definitely unhealthy. And I believe that if he gets into shape, he could get another chance with a new team. Because before he was dropped, he was an amazing running back. Last year, he was very productive for Tampa Bay. But I think that if he can get another chance on a team like that, like another team that like needs a lot of help, that he could definitely capitalize and he could make it back to that like good running back that he was last year. I don't know if he'll be as good as he was, but I think he could be a pretty good running back still. I think that it's just all about him losing some weight. Another guy who has a lot of talk around him is Cam Akers, and he was just traded with a 7th-round pick for just a 6th-round pick from the Vikings. So I feel like with the potential that Akers had coming into the league, I think it's a very bad trade for the Rams just because it's really early into his career. So just because he had that injury in his first season, I think that they're just assuming that he's not going to be good because he wasn't good last year when he played, and this year he hasn't been doing good. But I think he might just need some time, and maybe the Rams just don't want to wait. But I think that's what they need to do because they do have Kyren Williams, so they can just work on making Cam Akers a better running back and use Kyren Williams in the meantime, because Kyren is a great running back, but Cam Akers, I feel like I said, just needs some time, and he'll become that great running back that everybody expected him to be. But now that he's with the Vikings, he's probably going to be sharing some snaps with Alexander Mattison. So it'll definitely be interesting to see how that works out. But I am really excited to see Cam Akers get a new chance to possibly be a starter for this Vikings team. A lot of fans seem to be disappointed with Josh Jacobs, so let's talk about him next. We saw Josh Jacobs hold out on his contract before returning to the Raiders for a 1-year deal. Jacobs played great last year, but he hasn't performed the same this year. And Jacobs has an opportunity to go to a new team next year, which could change a lot for him. I hope Jacobs' career doesn't start to go downhill and lead to him being like a backup or something, because I liked him a lot last year as a player, because last year he was super good for that Raiders team and he was producing. But now they have Jimmy G, who isn't as great of a quarterback, and for some reason he's producing less. So I don't know, it's just kind of weird, because I feel like with somebody who like Jimmy G, who is not going to be a great quarterback for your team, I feel like they would run more, but I guess Josh Jacobs, it just isn't getting it done. Finally, we have Kareem Hunt, and Hunt got offers from 4 teams, but they were all declined as he is, quote, waiting for the right offer, which is what he said. And so he met with the Vikings, the Saints, and the Colts, but didn't come to an agreement with any of them. Hunt's most recent team was the Browns, where he was there for 4 years and started only 9 times, with being the backup for Nick Chubb, obviously. And then before that, he had 2 great first 2 years with the Kansas City Chiefs, where he played 27 games and started in all of them. But Hunt was a Pro Bowl running back in his rookie year, but he hasn't been great since then. And Hunt would be a solid running back for a team who needs one, like the Giants while Saquon is out for them, or a team like the Colts while Jonathan Taylor's out for a long period of time. But there's definitely many destinations for Hunt and where he could land. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see how it works out and which destination Hunt lands at this year, because I feel like he could definitely be signed on possibly a 1 or 2 year contract to be a solid running back for a team like I said, the Colts, who definitely need the help with Jonathan Taylor being gone, or maybe a team who could use him more long term, or actually even the Saints could sign him too, because they have Alvin Kamara, who he only has 1 more week, which is going to be this week, week 3, on suspension. So I guess that's actually not really a great destination for him. And the Vikings just got Cam Akers, so I guess that's pretty much off the table. But like I said, a team like the Colts could probably use them. But there's definitely a couple other teams out there that I just can't think of off the top of my head that could probably use Kareem on their team. That's going to be it for today's episode. If you guys enjoyed, leave a like and subscribe, and we'll see you guys next Sunday here on the Hoops and Stuff podcast.